There are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Imagine if, instead of avoiding what scares you, you embraced it, using it to fuel your growth and build unshakable resilience. In today's video, we're going to explore the idea that certain fears are necessary. They push us to confront adversity, dig deep, and discover our true strength. These aren't the fears that cripple you. They're the ones that forge your character, making you tougher, more resilient, and ultimately more powerful. But then, there are ones that cripple by pricking through your irrationality. We'll dive into why facing these fears is crucial, why running from them only leaves you weaker, and how you can turn moments of terror into opportunities for profound personal growth. If you've ever felt like life's challenges are too much to bear, or if you're tired of being held back by fear, this video will show you a new way to look at the obstacles in your path. If you make it to the end, you will have seen that the fear you feel isn't something to shrink from. It's a signpost on the road to your greatest self, and that's no mean feat. Fight through the fear. Some fears are essential for our growth. They push us to confront adversity and build the resilience we need to thrive. These fears, while uncomfortable, are not obstacles to be avoided, but opportunities to be embraced. They force us to dig deep, to discover strengths we didn't know we had, and to forge a spirit that remains unyielding in the face of challenges. It's through encountering difficulties, sometimes even facing them head-on, that we come to realize the full extent of our inner power. Without these tests, our strength remains theoretical, unproven, and we are left wondering whether we truly have what it takes to endure life's storms. Our powers, the capacities for courage, endurance, and resilience, can never fully inspire confidence unless they have been put to the test. It's one thing to believe you're strong when everything is going smoothly, but quite another to maintain that belief when life begins to crumble around you. Just as a sword is tempered by fire, so too is our spirit tempered by trials. These are the moments when we are forced to confront our fears, to stand our ground, and to push forward even when the odds seem stacked against us. It is in these crucibles of adversity that we find out what we are truly made of. Imagine a boxer who has never faced a real opponent, who has only ever shadow-boxed in the safety of a gym. He may be fit, he may know all the moves, but until he steps into the ring and takes a punch, until he feels the sting of failure and the taste of his own blood, he won't truly understand what it means to fight. The first time he's hit, his confidence may shatter. The first time he's knocked down, he might question whether he belongs in the ring at all. But for the fighter who has been through it, who has taken the hits and kept going, who has risen after every fall, the story is different. This fighter enters the ring with a quiet confidence, not because he has never been beaten, but because he has, and he knows he can take it. He's been bruised, battered, and bloodied, but each time he has come back stronger. He has learned not to fear the fight, but to embrace it, knowing that every blow he takes is an opportunity to grow tougher, more resilient. This is the essence of true spirit, one that refuses to bow to external circumstances, no matter how harsh. It's the spirit that recognizes fear, not as something to avoid, but as a signpost on the path to greater strength. When you've been knocked down and have found the will to get back up, you develop a kind of unshakable resolve. You learn that your spirit is not something that can be broken by mere physical pain or temporary setbacks. Instead, it's something that grows stronger with each challenge, each fall, and each rise. In life, we all face our own battles, whether in the form of personal struggles, professional challenges, or unforeseen crises. These are our opponents in the ring of life, and each one tests our resilience. The easy path might seem tempting, but it's the difficult one that truly shapes us. When we avoid challenges out of fear, we miss out on the chance to discover our full potential. But when we confront our fears, when we step into the ring despite the risk of being knocked down, we give ourselves the opportunity to build a strength that is both deep and enduring. The man or woman who has faced their fears and come out the other side is not easily shaken. They've seen their own limitations and they've pushed past them. They've felt the weight of adversity and they've learned that they can bear it. This experience fosters a resilience that is not only physical, but mental and emotional as well. It's a resilience that says, I've been here before and I've made it through. I can do it again. In the end, it's not about whether you fall, but whether you rise. Each time you get back up, you do so with more knowledge, more strength, and more confidence. This is how manliness, or more broadly, strength of character, gains its true power. It's not in avoiding challenges, but in meeting them head-on, in feeling the fear and doing it anyway. This is the path to true resilience, the kind that doesn't just survive adversity, but thrives in spite of it, emerging stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Understanding groundless fears. We often find ourselves haunted by more fears than the world could ever actually manifest. Our minds are fertile grounds for worry, anxiety, and dread, but much of what we fear never comes to pass. The real pain we experience in life is often less than the anguish we create in our own imaginations. Our thoughts can become prisons, chaining us to anxieties about things that haven't happened and may never happen. We allow ourselves to be tormented by shadows, by the mere possibility of danger, rather than waiting for the real crisis to emerge, if it ever does. When we let our imaginations run wild with fear, we react to the idea of danger as though it's already upon us, robbing ourselves of peace in the present moment. The irony is that many of the threats we anticipate will never materialize, and yet we suffer as if they are already real. The Stoics remind us that we shouldn't borrow trouble from the future. Why let ourselves be unhappy before the crisis arrives, especially when it might never arrive at all? This habit of exaggerating potential dangers, of imagining the worst possible outcomes, is a form of self-torment. Some things weigh on us more heavily than they should. Some worries haunt us long before there's any real cause for concern, and some fears are entirely baseless. Yet, we allow them to dictate our emotions, to cloud our judgment, and to steal our joy. It's like being in a room with a harmless mouse and reacting as if it were a lion. The fear we experience is disproportionate to the actual threat, and this disproportionate response stems not from the strength of the perceived danger, but from the weakness of our minds. Our minds, when left unchecked, have a way of twisting reality into something far more sinister than it is. We hear a neutral comment and interpret it as an insult. We see a colleague's success and assume it's a threat to our own. We take a momentary look of disapproval and inflate it into a long-standing grudge. Instead of focusing on what is actually happening, we imagine the worst-case scenario, allowing our fears to spiral out of control. We don't just consider the anger of an adversary, we let our minds wander to the most extreme consequences of that anger, blowing things out of proportion and creating unnecessary distress. If we indulge these fears to the fullest, life becomes unbearable. There's no end to the sorrows we can create for ourselves if we allow our imaginations to run wild with worry. This is why the Stoics urge us to practice prudence, to bring our fears into check with reason, and to face life's challenges with a resolute spirit. When real dangers do arise, we should meet them head-on with courage and clarity, rather than being overwhelmed by fears that may never come to pass. But what if our fears are too strong, too entrenched, to be dismissed by reason alone? In such cases, the Stoics suggest an intriguing approach: counter one weakness with another. If fear threatens to consume us, we can temper it with hope. While hope is not a foolproof solution, it can serve as a counterbalance to fear, providing us with a glimmer of light when darkness threatens to take over. It's a way of reminding ourselves that just as the things we fear may never happen, the things we hope for might also be illusions. This perspective helps to keep us grounded, preventing either extreme from dominating our thoughts. Ultimately, there is nothing so certain among the objects of our fear that it outweighs the uncertainty of life itself. The dangers we dread often fade into nothing, and the hopes we cherish can just as easily lead to disappointment. By recognizing the transitory nature of both fear and hope, we can maintain a balanced outlook. Instead of being swayed by every passing worry or fleeting desire, we learn to navigate life with equanimity, understanding that our real power lies not in controlling external events, but in managing our internal responses to them. Stoic wisdom here is a call to strengthen our minds, to reclaim our peace from the clutches of unnecessary fear. By keeping our imaginations in check, by focusing on the present reality rather than the possible future, and by balancing our fears with hope, we can lead a life that is not only less burdened by anxiety, but also richer in true contentment. Life, after all, is too short to be spent suffering over what might never happen. Face your fears. When people around us try to convince us that we are unhappy, we should not blindly accept their words, but instead turn inward and consult our own feelings. It's essential to remember that we know our own lives and our own emotions better than anyone else. Others may perceive our situation from the outside and make assumptions, but only we truly understand what we are experiencing. Therefore, when someone suggests that we should be distressed or that we are in a dire situation, we must pause and ask ourselves, is there any valid reason for their concern? Should I really feel as miserable as they imply, or are they merely projecting their own fears or misconceptions onto me? This kind of self-examination is crucial because it allows us to differentiate between genuine hardships and mere perceptions of hardship. Sometimes people around us may react as though our problems are contagious, as if our misfortunes could somehow spread to them like a virus. But before we accept their sympathy or share in their fear, we should ask ourselves, is this situation truly an evil, or is it just a matter of bad reputation or misunderstanding? We must critically evaluate whether we are turning something that is not inherently harmful into something that feels like a significant problem. If we find ourselves questioning whether our suffering is real or imagined, we need a method to assess our situation. The first step is to consider whether we are troubled by something in the present or by a fear of what might happen in the future. If we examine the present moment and find that we are free, healthy, and unharmed by any external forces, then we can conclude that there is no immediate cause for distress. If nothing is wrong right now, why borrow trouble from the future? Often we worry about what might happen later, but this worry is usually based on speculation rather than fact. Before we let fear take root, we should examine the evidence for these future troubles. Are there concrete reasons to believe that something bad will happen, or are we merely reacting to rumors and uncertainties? Frequently, We are more troubled by our own fears and imaginations than by actual events. Rumor, which can stir up panic and anxiety, often plays tricks on us. Just as rumors can escalate conflicts between nations, they can also disturb our peace of mind, making us anxious about things that may never come to pass. We have a tendency to accept what others say without questioning it. Instead of investigating the truth behind our fears, we often retreat at the first sign of trouble, just like soldiers who flee their camp when a dust cloud, raised by nothing more than stampeding cattle, makes them think an enemy is approaching. We panic before we even know what we're facing, simply because we assume the worst. What's more, it's often the idle, baseless rumors that disturb us the most. While truth has clear boundaries, something either is or isn't true, uncertainty breeds endless speculation. When we don't know the full picture, our minds fill in the gaps with worst-case scenarios, and this uncertainty is what drives us into a state of panic. Unlike other fears, which can be confronted with reason, panic fear is irrational and uncontrollable. It's a fear without foundation, a fear that exists purely in our minds, and because of this, it can be the most destructive of all. In the face of such fears, we must strive to remain grounded. Rather than letting idle talk or uncertain possibilities dictate our emotions, we should focus on what is real and present. By doing so, we can maintain our composure and avoid being swept away by baseless fears. Panic, after all, is the product of a mind that has lost its grip on reality, allowing imagination and speculation to run wild. To live wisely and peacefully, we must resist this urge to panic and instead approach each situation with a calm and rational mind. By keeping our fears in check and refusing to let rumor and uncertainty dictate our feelings, we protect ourselves from the ruinous effects of groundless anxiety. Forget the future. Let's take a closer look at how we approach the troubles that might befall us. While it's true that difficulties may lie ahead, we must remember that they are not yet a reality. How often in life have we seen the unexpected unfold, defying our worries and predictions? Just as frequently, the things we dread most never materialize at all. So, why do we rush to meet our suffering before it even arrives? We will face it soon enough if and when it does. In the meantime, let's direct our thoughts toward more hopeful possibilities, anticipating good outcomes rather than dwelling on what might go wrong. What is the benefit of this mindset? Time, precious time. By not allowing ourselves to be consumed by fear or anxiety over what might happen, we buy ourselves the time to live fully in the present. This time is invaluable, for within it lies the potential for countless events and circumstances to unfold that could delay, diminish, or even eliminate the trials we fear. Life has a way of throwing unexpected turns in our path, and sometimes those turns work in our favor. A fire might force us to flee, but that very act of fleeing could lead us to safety. In moments of catastrophe, we might find an unexpected escape or a stroke of luck that softens the blow. Consider this. Even in situations where it seems that fate has cornered us, there is still a chance for reprieve. A sword may be poised at our throat, but that doesn't mean it will necessarily strike. History is full of stories where the condemned have been spared at the last moment, where executioners have been stayed, and where those who seemed doomed to suffer have found unexpected deliverance. Bad fortune is capricious. It doesn't always follow through as we might expect. It can change its course, shift its focus, or even pass us by entirely. In the face of uncertainty, then, why should we allow ourselves to suffer in advance? Why should we let the mere possibility of hardship rob us of the peace and joy we could be experiencing right now? The future is unwritten, and while it holds the potential for pain, it equally holds the potential for joy, for success, for happiness. By looking forward to better things, we cultivate a sense of hope and resilience that can carry us through even the darkest of times. Moreover, there is a pragmatic wisdom in not rushing to meet our suffering before it arrives. By conserving our emotional energy and not allowing ourselves to be prematurely burdened by fear, we keep ourselves mentally and emotionally prepared to deal with challenges as they arise. We give ourselves the space to adapt, to respond flexibly to whatever life throws our way, rather than being worn down by the weight of anticipated suffering. In essence, this approach is about striking a balance between realism and optimism. We acknowledge that troubles may come, but we do not let the fear of them dominate our thoughts. Instead, we keep our eyes open for the good that could just as easily come our way. We prepare for the worst, but we hope for the best, and in doing so, we ensure that we live fully in the present, making the most of our time and our lives, no matter what the future may hold. So, rather than running out to meet suffering head-on, let's cultivate patience, hope, and a readiness to embrace whatever positive developments may arise. By doing this, we not only safeguard our present well-being, but also strengthen our ability to face whatever may come with greater resilience and grace. In the meantime, as we wait for life to unfold, let us look forward to better things, because just as misfortune is uncertain, so too is the potential for happiness and success. Be unshakable. We must carefully balance our hopes and fears, weighing them with the same consideration we would give to any important decision. When faced with uncertainty, why not choose to believe in the outcome we desire? If fear starts to dominate our thoughts, tipping the scales toward anxiety, we should consciously lean in the opposite direction. It's crucial to stop tormenting ourselves with endless worry, especially when there's no clear evidence that trouble is on the horizon. The truth is, most people allow themselves to become agitated and distressed even when nothing is actually wrong. We often get swept up in a current of fear without pausing to consider whether it's justified or not. Once fear begins to take hold, we rarely stop to question it. We don't challenge the stories we hear or the fears they generate. Instead, we let ourselves be carried away by every new worry, as if uncertainty itself were a guarantee of disaster. We panic over possibilities, treating them as certainties, and allow the smallest doubts to grow into overwhelming fears. This kind of behavior is all too common, and it's a path our human nature often leads us down. We're wired to be cautious, to see danger in the unknown, but that doesn't mean we should let these instincts run unchecked. Because this tendency is so deeply ingrained, it's all the more important that we make a conscious effort to cultivate and strengthen the good qualities within us. We should build up our courage, our resilience, and our capacity for hope. These are the tools that can help us resist the pull of fear and stay grounded, even when faced with uncertainty. Instead of giving in to panic, we should remind ourselves that not every fear is rational or justified. We must practice the discipline of stopping ourselves when we begin to be swept away by fear, and of questioning whether the source of our anxiety is truly worth our distress. Imagine someone else saying, "Perhaps the worst will not happen." This is a comforting thought, and one that can help calm our fears. But we can take it a step further. Even if the worst does happen, what then? We must be ready to meet it head-on, with the attitude of a fighter stepping into the ring. Let us see who wins, we should say, embracing the challenge rather than shrinking from it. perhaps the outcome we fear will turn out to be in our best interest after all. It may bring about a new opportunity, a chance to grow, or a way to demonstrate our strength and character. Take the example of Socrates, who faced death with dignity when he drank the hemlock. His death, far from being a tragedy, became a defining moment of his life, a final act of courage that has inspired countless others through the ages. Or consider Cato, who chose to end his life with a sword rather than live under tyranny. By doing so, he preserved his integrity and became a symbol of resistance against oppression. Had someone taken that sword from him, they would have deprived him of his greatest moment of glory. These examples show that even the worst outcomes can carry a kind of nobility, a chance for us to stand firm in our principles and show the world what we are truly made of. So instead of letting fear rule us, we should ask ourselves, what if this trial is the very thing that will bring out the best in me? By reframing our fears in this way, we transform them from sources of anxiety into opportunities for growth and honor. If you like what we do, feel free to do more and like and share the video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, to the community.